The series begins with the second part of Squid Game. Before we start, let me remind you of the events of the first season to connect the storyline. We learned about Sion, a poor man who desperately needed money. One day, a man approached him and offered him a chance to participate in a game called Squid Game, promising him a large sum of money. Sion agreed and was given the number 4 of 56. He soon discovered that many participants were impoverished individuals burdened with debt. However, those who failed to win the game faced death. In the end, Sion managed to win the game and discovered that the elderly man wearing number 1, who had been part of the game, was actually a wealthy individual who had come up with the idea for the game. This man, who created the game concept, eventually passed away due to terminal brain cancer. After everything he endured during the games, Sion decided to seek revenge for the suffering and punishment he experienced. Season 2 starts with Sion, now sporting red hair, leaving the airport after canceling his trip to visit his daughter in America. He receives a call from an unknown number, asking why he hasn't gone to see his daughter. Sion replies that he has decided not to travel and instead plans to track down the masterminds behind the game to seek revenge. Sion then visits a supermarket and enters a restroom, where he discovers a device implanted behind his ear, likely to track his location. He grabs a small knife, cuts into his ear, and removes the device, which turns out to be a small GPS-like chip. Around the same time, we see John-Hoo, a police officer who has been in a coma for a long time, waking up. We learn that he is still alive after previously infiltrating Squid Game as a staff member to gather evidence of the atrocities committed during the games. However, John-Hoo discovered that his own brother was one of the orchestrators of the games. To protect the secrecy of the games, his brother shot him, but John-Hoo survived. 2 years later, John-Hoo has become a traffic police officer. He stops a young couple riding a motorcycle because the boy isn't wearing a helmet and writes him a ticket. The girl tries to persuade John-Hoo to drop the ticket, but the boy becomes angry and takes the fine. John-Hoo appears detached, having lost faith in others after his attempts to expose the game's horrors were ignored. When questioned about who shot him, he nervously claims not to know. Meanwhile, Sion dreams of the game overseer appearing with the severed heads of 2 of his former game allies. He wakes up startled and dyes his hair black again. Shortly after, he hears a knock at the door. When he opens it, he finds Hoo-seog, one of the debt collectors from whom he borrowed money before winning the game. Hoo-seog has been hired by Sion to locate the recruiter who convinces people to join the games. Hoo-seog informs Sion that he has been searching for 2 years without results, but Sion insists the recruiter must be found and believes the games are still ongoing. Sion gives Hoo-seog extra money to continue the search. Hoo-seog gets into a car with his associates and promises to intensify their efforts. One of his men suggests that Sion might be insane for pursuing this for 2 years without any leads. However, Hoo-seog believes in Sion because he noticed the sudden disappearance of many indebted people. He mentions that Sion cleared his debts and is now spending large sums of money to locate the recruiter. Hoo-seog motivates his team by offering 1 million Korean won if they succeed in finding the person they are searching for, which excites his men. The next day, we see Hoo-seog gathering his entire team to share details about the man they are searching for. They spread out across the train station, asking people if they've seen someone matching the description who might have offered them a chance to participate in a game. They begin inspecting everyone carrying a bag or wearing a suit. Meanwhile, John-Hoo searches every bridge surrounding the sea, knowing the game location has been moved. He is determined to uncover the new site, but unfortunately fails to find any information. Days pass, and it becomes clear that no one has managed to find even the smallest lead. One day, Hoo-seog and one of his team members sit at the train station, seemingly having given up. Suddenly, they spot the man they've been searching for playing a game with another man. They immediately call Sion, exclaiming that they found the man he wanted. Sion, shocked, grabs his pistol and rushes out. He instructs Hoo-seog to keep an eye on the man until he arrives. At the same time, we see the man in question approach impoverished individuals, asking them to choose between a loaf of bread and a mysterious card. Most people choose the card but fail to win anything. He then throws the bread on the ground, stepping on it, and scolds them for wasting their chance at food by making the wrong choice. This strange behavior baffles everyone around him, and Hoo-seog records the scene on video. The man notices Hoo-seog and his team following him and manages to escape. Husiog and his team chase him in a taxi, determined not to lose him. However, the man is aware of their pursuit and ambushes them, beating them badly. Meanwhile, Sion is stopped by traffic police for speeding. He silently accepts the fine and drives off. Coincidentally, John-Hoo's colleague remarks on the man's suspicious behavior, prompting John-Hoo to check his name. When he discovers it is Sion, John-Hoo recalls that he was a participant in Squid Game. John-Hoo then searches the civil registry to confirm Sion's identity. Sion arrives at the location where Husiog was last seen and notices blood, realizing that the man they were tracking has kidnapped Husiog. The scene shifts to show the man holding Husiog and his teammate captive in a locked room. The man announces that they will play a game where the loser will have a gun pointed at their head. Their fate depends entirely on their luck. They either survive or die. Both captives are terrified, and when Husiog loses, the man shoots him. Meanwhile, John-Hoo visits Husiog's workplace and discovers that he had been investigating the Squid Game recruiter. While John-Hoo is searching the area, someone enters the room, forcing him to hide. Once the person leaves, John-Hoo continues searching and finds a file belonging to Sion. At the same time, Sion returns home to find the recruiter waiting for him. Sion asks why he never left after winning the game. Sion replies that he initially wanted to thank the recruiter for giving him a chance to join the game, which changed his life and made him rich. He then requests to meet the people responsible for running the game so he can express his gratitude. The recruiter reveals that he once discovered his own father was a participant in the game. When his father lost, the recruiter was forced to kill him by shooting him in the head. That day, he realized this job was suited for him. He then asks Sion if he considers himself different from others since he won the game. Sion responds that the recruiter could never understand his feelings because he never participated in the game. The recruiter suggests they play a game. He loads a single bullet into a gun and proposes they take turns pointing it at their heads. The one with luck on their side will survive. The scene ends with the two preparing to test their fate. During the game, the recruiter tells Sion, "If you want to meet the people in charge of the game, the key is in my pocket. You can kill me without exhausting yourself by playing the game." He adds, "But first, you have to admit that you're just as filthy as everyone else." Sion ignores his words and retorts, "You're like a dog obeying its master. In the end, you're just a worthless dog." Sion then beats the recruiter, and when the gun is fired, it turns out to be the recruiter's unlucky turn. He dies. At that moment, John-Hoo, who is sitting in his car, locates Sion's residence. Hearing the sound of the gunshot, he rushes into the building to investigate. Inside, he finds a person named Kim tied up and lying on a bed, stripped of clothes. John-Hoo asks Kim about Sion's whereabouts, and Kim informs him that Sion is in room 410. When John-Hoo arrives at the room, he discovers the recruiter's corpse. He arrests Sion, accusing him of the murder. However, Kim suddenly appears from behind and strikes John-Hoo on the head. Kim then tells Sion that Husiog had killed the recruiter, not him. Sion retrieves a special Squid Game card from the recruiter's pocket, which has an address written on it. When John-Hoo regains consciousness, Sion is standing nearby. John-Hoo interrogates him about how he found out his identity. John-Hoo then recalls the night of the riot during the game, when masked workers entered to stop the chaos. Sion becomes visibly nervous, realizing that John-Hoo had infiltrated the workers to search for his missing brother. However, Sion remains skeptical. John-Hoo asks, "Do you know someone named In-Hoo? He's my brother." This triggers Sion's memory of encountering a masked worker who had introduced himself as In-Hoo. John-Hoo continues, asking, "Who is the person you killed?" Sion reveals that it was the recruiter who sold the games to the participants. He adds that the recruiter committed suicide after losing the game. Sion also discloses that he is searching for the people behind the game to take revenge and shut it down. John-Hoo reveals that he saw the leader of the game mentioning the people were calling him all day the big boss. He was wearing a mask the whole time. Sion decides to continue his search alone. John-Hoo tells him, "The old man, number 1, once told me that the entire game was created by a client. If you find that client, the game will end." John-Hoo then expresses his own desire to find those responsible, saying he cannot forget his brother, just as Seon cannot forget the people who died in the game. He offers to help Seon. Seon takes John-Hoo and Kim to a room filled with weapons he had collected over 2 years to prepare for confronting the game organizers. He demonstrates how he has been training to shoot. Seon asks John-Hoo to quit his job as a police officer so they can work together without restrictions. Later, Seon visits a man known for helping people illegally travel. He asks him to bring Saebyok's mother from North Korea to South Korea. The man informs him that Saebyok's mother was released from prison but is suffering from tuberculosis, which had broken out in the prison. He adds that it will take time to bring her over. Seon assures him, "I'll give you the money you need," handing him a note with the address of the fish shop where her mother works. He adds, "If you don't find Saebyok's mother, you'll find a sibling of hers at that address." The same man is later approached by a woman named Noyol, who is searching for her 1-year-old daughter. She explains that the last time she saw her daughter was in North Korea. The man tells her, "It's impossible for a 1-year-old child to have survived all those years in North Korea without parents." He recalls that the girl had returned from North Korea after a leader there shot her in the head. He accuses Noyol of being a criminal but apologizes for his harsh words. He adds, "I know it's hard for a mother to forget her child, but you must try, especially since your daughter is gone." That evening, while Nail was sitting in her car, holding a picture of her daughter and crying, someone knocked on her window and handed her a Squid Game card. Nail was stunned. The next morning, John-Hoo went to the grave of his brother's wife and placed flowers on it, just as his brother used to do. When he returned home, he sat down with his mother. She spoke to him in a sorrowful tone, saying, "I think your brother doesn't want to live with us anymore." She feared that his brother had left because she had always seemed to favor John-Hoo. She explained, "You're my son, but he is my husband's son." She believed his brother had been upset since the day his wife died, still haunted by the guilt of being unable to help her when she was ill. Instead, he had prioritized saving John-Hoo over his wife. John-Hoo responded, "I think he hates me because he could have sacrificed me to save his wife." He became angry with his mother, accusing her of making him feel guilty all day. Meanwhile, Nail quit her job, where she had been working with children at a play center. As she was leaving, she noticed an ambulance loading a young girl named Nayeon. Her father was in tears, terrified for his daughter. Nail decided to follow them to the hospital, where she overheard the doctor explaining to Nayeon's father that the girl had blood cancer. The doctor mentioned that their insurance wouldn't cover all the expenses. Nail secretly entered the room and gently touched Nayeon's hand. She left her cap beside the girl and then called the number on the Squid Game card. When the call was answered, she said, "I want to participate in the game." She provided her name and date of birth, and the person on the line gave her the address for the pickup location. Elsewhere, Seon brought a dentist to extract one of his teeth in exchange for a GPS tracker to locate someone. He handed the payment to Kim, instructing him to stay silent. Later, Seon and John-Hoo met up with some men Kim had brought in to assist with their plan. Kim revealed that these men were former members of Korea's Special Forces. Seon worked out a plan with the group's leader. Seon then headed to the address on the Squid Game card. Kim was surprised to see that everyone there was masked. John-Hoo, noticing that it was Halloween, waited in his car, tracking them using the GPS. Inside the venue, which was hosting a party, Kim got into a fight with one of the Squid Game staff and was subdued with an electric shock. Meanwhile, Seon followed one of the staff members and noticed a white car. He followed it. John-Hoo, realizing what was happening, tried to warn Seon and Kim, but the guards stopped him from entering. John-Hoo pulled out his gun, threatening one of the guards, who then allowed him to enter. During the event, one of the Squid Game staff attacked Kim, but Seon was able to follow another staff member into the parking lot where he saw a white car. Inside the car, Seon found a loudspeaker. The leader spoke to him, saying, "It was never about your daughter traveling here. This was about choice." Seon angrily demanded that the games stop, but the leader calmly explained that everyone entered the games willingly and that no one was forced to participate. Seon rejected this explanation, accusing them of exploiting people's desperation and manipulating their emotions to make them participate. He pulled out his gun, intending to shoot the driver, but the leader warned him that what he was thinking wouldn't work. At that moment, a sniper shot Kim, preventing the white car from being followed. Realizing the lengths they were willing to go to, Seon decided to participate in the games again. The leader was surprised, but Sion said, "Are you afraid it will fail, just like number 1? The leader responded, "Since you've decided to participate, we'll treat you as you wish." A sedative gas was released into the car, putting Sion to sleep. The leader, seated at the front of the car, wore a black mask and welcomed Sion, player 456, back to the game. At the same time, Nail was seen putting on the Squid Game uniform, preparing to join the game as well. The next day, Seyoon wakes up to find himself in the Squid Game facility, lying on a bed and wearing the game uniform. He notices other players waking up around him, all dressed the same. At that moment, the game staff, dressed in red uniforms and masks, enter and announce that they will be participating in 6 different games over 6 days. Whoever manages to win all 6 games will receive a large sum of money. The players begin questioning the staff, asking why they were abducted and why the staff hide their faces. One of the staff members responds, explaining that it's a policy to ensure the game remains safe and anonymous. During this exchange, player 333 speaks up, stating that he's only here for the money because he wants to recover his losses from the cryptocurrency market. He adds that he doesn't want to lose any more funds. Another staff member interrupts to reveal player 333's identity, naming him Mian, a 30-year-old YouTuber. Mian used to encourage his viewers to invest in cryptocurrency, which led to a collective loss of 15 million won. His YouTube channel was later shut down due to accusations of fraud and violating investment and communication laws. Since then, he has disappeared, leaving behind massive debts. The staff then turn their attention to player 196, revealing that her name is Mina and that she owes 45 million won. As the players hear these details, tension builds, and they are shocked to discover that someone with debts of over 10 billion won is among them. The staff announce that the prize money for winning the game is 45 billion won and mention that each game will include a vote to decide whether to continue or stop. Shun is surprised to learn that players can leave the game at any time and still keep the money they've earned from earlier rounds. Despite this option, all the players sign agreements to continue participating in the games. Soon after, player 230, a man named Thanos, attacks Mian, blaming him for his losses in cryptocurrency investments. Thanos considers Mian a fraud and holds him responsible for his financial downfall. It is then revealed that Thanos is a famous rapper. During this commotion, one of his fans attempts to take a photo with him, but a staff member refuses, citing game rules. Meanwhile, Seyoon is shocked to see one of his old friends, Gong Bae, also participating in the game. Gong Bae is equally surprised to see Seyoon alive, having thought he died after disappearing for 3 years. Gong Bae tells Seyoon that he heard about his mother's death and shares that he recently divorced his wife. Seyoon, overwhelmed with emotion, pleads with Gong Bae to stay close, leaving Gong Bae visibly puzzled. At the same time, John-Hoo tries to track Seyoon's location using GPS. He boards a ship with a companion, Kim, to follow a map leading to Seyoon's location. They eventually arrive at an isolated island and use a drone camera to search for clues. Unexpectedly, Kim encounters a fisherman on the shore, and they are both startled when they discover a peculiar device. This device, the clue to Seyoon's whereabouts, is eerily connected to fish caught in the surrounding waters. At that moment, Kim speaks to John-Hoo and explains everything that has happened so far. Meanwhile, we see the players gathering at the game site, preparing for the first game called Red Light, Green Light. Seyoon grows anxious, wondering why Kim and John-Hoo haven't arrived yet. He examines the fake tooth in his mouth and realizes that the clue to his location, which was hidden in the tree, has been removed. Shocked, he warns the other players, telling them, "This isn't an ordinary game. If you lose, you die." He further explains the rules of the game. During the red light phase, anyone who moves will be eliminated. However, the other players mock him, thinking he's crazy or trying to scare them so he can take all the money for himself. Just as the mocking intensifies, the game begins. The doll starts counting, turning its head to detect any movement. Seyoon, having played this game before, decides to help the other players survive. Gong Bae tries to calm Seyoon down, worried that his warnings will only create more panic. Despite this, the game takes a deadly turn when a bee lands on Mina's neck, causing her to flinch. As a result, the doll detects her movement, and she is immediately shot and killed. Seyoon urgently shouts to the remaining players, "Don't move, cover your mouths if you need to speak." Despite his warning, fear spreads among the players, causing many to move and be eliminated one by one. In the midst of the chaos, it's revealed that Naol, one of the game staff, is responsible for overseeing the eliminations. Shockingly, her father is one of the players. Meanwhile, the leader of the game watches the events unfold on a monitor, sipping his tea. Gradually, the players begin to trust Siyun and follow his advice, advancing step by step toward the finish line. As Siyun nears the end, he notices a player who has fallen and injured his leg. Despite the risk, Siyun decides to go back and help him. Hyun-sho, player 120, joins him, and together they manage to cross the finish line just in time. However, Naol eliminates the injured player Siyun saved, stating that his efforts didn't meet the criteria for success. This leaves Siyun and Hyun-sho horrified. After the game, the staff congratulate the surviving players on completing the first challenge. However, the players remain terrified, pleading with the staff not to kill them. One staff member reassures them that no harm will come to them now. Hyun takes this opportunity to explain the stakes of the third round, stating that if everyone votes to end the game, it will be terminated. When the players see the prize money accumulating from the deaths of the 91 eliminated participants, they are tempted to continue. The staff announce that they will hold a vote, allowing the players to decide whether to proceed. Hyun casts his vote to end the game and begins urging the others to do the same. However, he notices that most players are voting to continue. Determined to stop the madness, Siyun passionately appeals to their reason, saying, "Think carefully. If we continue, we'll all die." This angers the players, who accuse him of trying to control their decisions. Gongbei steps in to defend Siyun, saying, "If it weren't Siyun, we'd all been dead." Siyun, visibly angered, exclaims, "I played this game 3 years ago, and I know exactly what happens. In the end, everyone who participated died." This revelation shocks the players, but it also solidifies their belief that Siyun must have been the sole survivor. Instead of discouraging them, it motivates them to continue the game, hoping to win the prize money. One of the staff members, annoyed by Siyun's interference, threatens him for meddling in their operations. When the vote to continue or end the game results in a tie, the final decision rests on player 001. To everyone's surprise, he votes to continue the game. With the majority now in favor, the vote concludes and the game proceeds. It's at this moment that the audience learns player 001 is actually the leader of the game. He gives Siyun a challenging stare, hinting at his hidden intentions. The next day, during lunch, the players try to pry information from Siyun about the next game. Siyun reveals that it's called Dalgona, a game where participants must carve shapes out of honeycomb candy. He explains that there are 4 shapes to choose from, with the triangle being the easiest and the umbrella being the hardest. Later, the leader, still posing as player 001, sits next to Siyun and engages him in conversation. He asks Siyun why he returned to the game after winning 45 billion won. Siyun responds that the money wasn't truly his. It belonged to the families of the people who died in the game. Meanwhile, Thanos tries to provoke Yeon, asking him to win so he can recover the money he lost. When Yeon ignores him, Thanos shoves food into his mouth, causing Yeon to lash out in anger. A fight ensues, and Thomas intervenes, beating Yeon severely. Player 001 steps in and stops Thomas, showing surprising strength and control. He beats Thomas until he begs for mercy, earning applause from the other players for asserting authority. That night, when everyone is asleep, player 001 visits Siyun and opens up about his true motives. He reveals that his wife is gravely ill, suffering from liver failure, and urgently needs a transplant. He explains that he borrowed money from a businessman to fund the transplant, but people accused him of taking bribes, leading to his dismissal from his job. The game, he says, is his only hope to save his wife, even if it means winning blood money. At the same time, we see that the staff are conducting autopsies on the deceased players to harvest and sell their organs. However, they discover that many of the organs are unusable because the bodies have been dead for too long. A staff member reports to the supervisor that some players were killed prematurely, with double shots to confirm their deaths. The supervisor demands to know who was responsible, and the staff reveal it was player 011, Naol. The scene shifts to Naeol standing before the supervisor. She admits that she shot the eliminated players twice to ensure they were dead. The supervisor, visibly frustrated, tells her, "Since the day I met you, you've terrified me. I'll give you one last chance, but the leader must never find out about this." Naeol responds defiantly, "When you hired me, you told me to eliminate anyone who seemed burdened by life, but now things have changed, and this wasn't part of the deal." The supervisor, angered, insists, "Those organs are meant to save others. This isn't just about the game." Naeol leaves without another word, leaving the supervisor seething. Then we see John-Hu arriving at the police station, pleading with his superior officer to help him. The superior, initially frustrated due to John-Hu's resignation from the force, begrudgingly decides to assist him. John-Hu takes his superior to meet the precinct's chief inspector and requests an investigation into the location of the Squid Game. However, the chief inspector, skeptical and annoyed, dismisses John-Hu, saying, "We don't investigate cases without solid evidence. Come back when you have proof." Frustrated, John-Hu leaves the station in anger. Next, we see Kim meeting with a captain who agrees to help Kim and John-Hu locate Siyun. During this time, Kim starts to reveal information about Siyun and the game. Meanwhile, a player named John-Hee, player 222, is revealed to know Myeon. Myeon is shocked to find John-Hee in the game, as she hadn't seen her before. We learn that John-Hee is pregnant with Myeon's child and had asked her to terminate the pregnancy. However, John-Hee refused and decided to keep the baby, expressing happiness that Thanos had beaten Myeon. The second game begins, and Siyun is surprised to find it's a completely new game. The players are instructed to form groups of 5. Suspicion and anger rise among the players as they accuse Siyun of lying about the next game being Dalgona. Player 001 defends Siyun and joins his team, which also includes Gongbei and Dae-hoo. The team is still short by one member. John-Hee approaches Siyun's team, asking to join because she's exhausted due to her pregnancy. The team hesitates but ultimately accepts her. Meanwhile, another player, Yong-sig, struggles to find a team because he is accompanied by his elderly mother. His mother tells him to leave her behind and join any group willing to take him, but Yong-sig refuses. Eventually, they find a group with an open slot and join them. The game begins, and the staff explains the rules. The team members are tied together, and each member must participate in a minigame. The team's success depends on how well they perform collectively. Fear spreads among the players as they witness other teams failing and being executed. The staff members efficiently remove the bodies of the deceased, placing them in coffins. At one point, Naeol spots a survivor and immediately shoots them to ensure they're dead. Then, it's Yonsig's team's turn. Yonsig comes up with a plan to move in reverse, which allows them to move faster and avoid wasting time. Despite doubts from the other players about Yonsig's mother's abilities, she surprises everyone by successfully completing the game. Their team secures a victory. The last team to play is Siyun's. They manage to win the game as well, but player 001 fails twice during the game, becoming frustrated and hitting himself in anger. Siyun calms him down and motivates him, and eventually 001 manages to succeed. However, the team is deeply shaken when they see that all the players from the previous team who failed were executed. Meanwhile, Naeol is attacked by 2 staff members in her room because she mistakenly killed a player whose organs were supposed to be harvested. The staff members warn her that if she repeats such a mistake, they will cut off her fingers. One of them slashes her face with a knife as a punishment. Naeol, furious, tries to fight back and escape, but is overpowered and subdued. Later, the staff informs the remaining players about the money accumulated from the 2 games, which totals 1 million. However, the players, including Yonsig, become angry because the amount seems too small, considering that 110 players died in the second game. The staff explains that they can vote again on whether to continue the game or stop. This time, 001 starts the voting and surprisingly chooses to end the game. However, Yonsig votes to continue, shocking his mother. Even 001 is surprised to see that many players still want to proceed, despite the brutal deaths of so many others right before their eyes. Then, Yonsig becomes frustrated and asks angrily why someone would want the game to continue. The voting concludes, deciding that the game will proceed. Shun feels a sense of hopelessness after this decision. Yonsig attempts to apologize to his mother, explaining that he is heavily in debt and has no choice but to keep playing. His mother, saddened, responds by saying that someone else might die in the next game. Meanwhile, Gongbei apologizes to Seyoon and the rest of the team for voting to continue, explaining that he is compelled to keep playing to win enough money to pay off his debt. Seyoon retorts, warning that in the next game, they might be forced to kill themselves. That night, Seyoon stays awake, guarding his team out of fear that players might attack each other during the night, as had happened before. Player 11 notices this and questions Shun about his anxiety. Shun snaps at him, saying that he hasn't seen what Shun has, and tells him to take guard shifts until morning. Later, when everyone is asleep, Yeonsig's mother asks the staff to escort her and Jeonhee to the restroom. While there, she attempts to have a compassionate conversation with Jeonhee, who starts crying. Yeonsig's mother grows concerned, asking if she feels unwell or if something has happened to the baby. Jeonhee admits she is feeling scared. The next day, Jeonhoo gathers two teams, one led by Captain Park and the other by Captain Gu. He emphasizes the urgency of finding the island within 6 days, or the game will end. Shortly after, the players learn that the next game is about to begin. They are directed to form groups based on a number they hear, and they must gather in rooms with matching numbers within 30 seconds, locking the doors behind them. Chaos ensues as players scramble to form teams. Shun notices the staff killing those who fail to meet the requirements. The games become increasingly difficult, and the players are eventually forced into rooms to complete the numbers. At one point, Yeonsig's mother is separated to complete a group of 3. She is joined by Seyoon and 001. During the game, 01 asks her about her son, making an insensitive remark implying he abandoned her. Angered, she defends her son, saying he has a good heart. Yeonsig later breaks down crying, feeling guilty for leaving his mother alone. She tries to console him. In the next game, Mion enters a room where she competes against Yong. Tragically, Yong loses and is killed, leaving Mion and others in tears. Yong had been a kind-hearted girl beloved by everyone. In another round, Gongbei and 001 end up in a room with a third player. The number is 2 and 001 brutally kills the third person. Gongbei is shocked by 001's behavior. After the game ends, the staff announces that players can vote on whether to end the game or continue before the 4th round begins. Shun is momentarily hopeful, seeing that most players seem inclined to vote for the game to stop. However, Gongbei grows anxious, suspecting that 001 might vote to continue. To everyone's surprise, 001 votes to end the game, leaving Seyoon relieved. The voting for the game reaches a tie, prompting the staff to announce that the players will be given time to reconsider their decision. Meanwhile, we see Thomas trying to convince another player to vote for continuing the game. During this time, Mion intervenes, asking Thomas to stay away from Min-soo. However, Thomas reminds Jeonhee of their past connection, angering Mion. In a fit of rage, Mion grabs a fork and stabs Thomas in the neck and chin. Elsewhere, Jeonhoo arrives at the island and finds a door. As he attempts to open it, he discovers it is rigged with explosives, which detonate. Kim and Jeonhoo quickly realize that those controlling the game are monitoring their every move. Jeonhoo decides they should avoid using their mobile phones and rely on wireless devices to communicate. Back in the main facility, Mion, fearful of what he has done, locks himself in the bathroom. At the same time, chaos erupts among the players, escalating to the point where some begin killing each other in plain sight. The staff stands outside, watching and allowing the violence to unfold. They permit the players to attack one another freely. Soon, tensions rise between the groups supporting the continuation of the game and those wanting to stop it. Both sides strategize about how to achieve their goals. Seyoon proposes that they fight back against the staff and seize their weapons, but 001 disagrees, arguing that the staff outnumbers them and has superior weaponry. Seyoon insists that this is their last chance to stop the game. During the night, a group of players hides under the beds to avoid being targeted by those in favor of continuing the game. The facility descends into chaos as players engage in intense battles, killing each other. Shun hides under a bed, waiting for the staff to intervene, knowing that the deaths of too many players would jeopardize the continuation of the game. Eventually, the staff arrives, firing warning shots to subdue the players. Seyoon pretends to be dead, planning to ambush the staff. Similarly, Daeho and Gongbei fake their deaths, allowing them to disarm the staff and launch an attack. They manage to capture some of the staff members. The supervisor, enraged by the situation, orders the remaining staff to secure the area and lock the doors. However, Seyoon and his team take control of part of the staff and refuse to kill those who had supported continuing the game, despite having already killed many who opposed it. Seyoon and his allies then destroy the cameras monitoring them and address the remaining players. Seyoon delivers a speech urging the players to attack those overseeing the game. Gongbei supports him, saying, "They're just as scared as we are, but this is our only chance to escape." Inspired by their courage, more players join Seyoon's group. They capture one of the staff members, removing his mask and forcing him to guide them to the control room. Unexpectedly, the rest of the staff launches a counterattack, warning the group not to approach the control center. Despite the ambush, Seyoon and his team manage to escape. The captured staff member continues leading them to the control room, determined to expose the truth behind the game. The staff tells Seyoon instructs to cover his face with a mask so they can move forward undetected. Suddenly, a gunshot strikes one of the staff members in the head, and Seyoon hides quickly. More shots ring out, hitting other staff members, and Gongbei removes the mask from one of the fallen guards. He and Seyoon run, frantically searching door after door for the control room, but they find nothing. Seyoon dons a mask and positions himself in front of a camera. Miraculously, a door to the supervisor's room opens. The supervisor watches Seyoon and Gongbei on the monitors and orders the remaining staff to capture them. As soon as Seyoon and Gongbei realize they've been spotted, they launch an attack, using guns and whatever weapons they have seized. Seyoon shows remarkable bravery, taking weapons from fallen staff members to protect himself and Gongbei. Meanwhile, 001, who had been observing the chaos on the cameras, enters the control room where Seyoon and Gongbei are. Seyoon hesitates but hands a weapon to 01, showing a gesture of trust. Daeho, another member of their group, scavenges more weapons from the dead but grows fearful as gunfire intensifies. Overwhelmed with anxiety, he discards his communication device and retreats, refusing to answer anyone. Suddenly, 001 turns on Seyoon and Gongbei. He kills the two remaining players in their group and communicates with Seyoon through a radio, saying, "It's over now." He even taunts Seyoon by broadcasting the sound of him killing another injured player nearby. Seyoon, terrified and confused, believes the staff may have betrayed and killed 001 and his companions. Elsewhere, a boat operator controlling a drone spots Park suspiciously handling something. When approached, Park stabs the operator and dumps the body into the sea. Kim, hearing the commotion, arrives and asks about a strange sound he heard. Park lies, saying he also heard it and dismisses it as the sound of waves, convincing Kim to drop his suspicion. The scene shifts back to the game's survivors, now significantly reduced in number and gravely injured. The situation has deteriorated to the point where one of them considers suicide. Seyoon is begged to surrender by the remaining players, but before he can decide, the staff makes their move and begins eliminating the players indiscriminately. With no options left, Seyoon and Gongbei decide to surrender, realizing they are completely alone against overwhelming forces. As they approach to give themselves up, the masked supervisor emerges. He coldly kills Gongbei right in front of Seyoon, stating, "This is the consequence of your mistakes." Seyoon falls to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably, grief and despair etched on his face. He cries out for losing his best friend. The drama ends with this sadness. Subscribe for more videos like this one, tap the bell icon, and don't forget to turn on the notifications to get the updates first.